welcome to Procurement Pivots, the podcast for procurement professionals wanting to navigate change successfully and create career success on your own terms. I'm Donna Bowden, procurement career coach and founder of Narrate Your Career.
And I'm Laura Sellers, executive coach for procurement and founder of Coaching for Procurement. And between us, we bring almost 25 years of supporting and working with procurement professionals. And it's fair to say we've navigated many of our own career pivots along the way. And now we're here to help you do the same.
Each episode will share practical strategies, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you confidently tackle the changes and challenges in your procurement career.
Let's get started.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Procurement Pivots, in which today we are exploring another top trait of exceptional procurement leaders. And today's focus is going to be all about curiosity. Hello, Donna.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. The weather is still quite warm. It's all very nice.
Yeah, it's sunny. We'll take that, but not as muggy as it was the other week. Yes. So no, it's good.
Yeah. So curiosity then is something I feel is a word that gets bandied about so much about we need to be more curious to be more effective in procurement when it comes to influencing, when it comes to that seat at the table. But what does it really involve? What does it mean? And I'd love to hear your take on this, Donna. So, because it means lots of different things in my view, but let's go with where we should start.
Yeah, and I think just in terms of the topic itself, we both think that this is a really important trait. We see it when we were talking about some of those most successful procurement leaders that we see. We both said it was one of those kind of traits that we both shared quite early on. And so I think this is also about using your curiosity as, I suppose, an opportunity for growth within your procurement career, particularly as a procurement leader. So, yeah, we think this can make a really big difference. So your question, what does it actually mean? I mean, I think for me, it is just so heavily linked to making sure that you're asking the right questions in lots and lots of different environments. I guess arming yourself with the right insights and the right information, which I think when you do it well, it's so powerful, isn't it? Actually, questions, they're so powerful, for helping you to make better decisions, building better relationships, having greater influence, having greater impact. So yeah, for me, it is just so closely linked to really, I guess, being intentional around your use of questioning in lots of different scenarios. Questions for others, but actually questions for yourself as well, because we love that, don't we? Holding the mirror up and reflecting and asking yourself those really powerful questions. But yeah, I think it can make just the biggest difference, I think, when people do this really, really well. And it can really change the outcome and the results and the buy-in. I think it really, really can. So what's your, when that word kind of springs to mind for you, what are you thinking about specifically?
Very similar things. I mean, I think going back to that phrase that I think we've discussed before around that being the most interested as opposed to the most interesting person in the room, because when somebody feels like you're really interested in seeing them, understanding their motivations or understanding what they need, it is incredibly powerful. And a lot of the time it is around open questions, like you say, asking great questions, not just accepting the status quo or asking a clarifying question, because sometimes an answer that might come might not actually be the answer that we need, or we think, oh, we could have asked a better question. So I think definitely, just to recap on some of the things you said, to build better relationships, to be more collaborative, to build influence in your career, curiosity is a huge part of that. And of course, being coaches, as you say, curiosity starts within as well, because there is definitely a lot of value in being able to understand about your own responses, your own reactions to things, and being curious about, well, why does that stakeholder bother me so much? Why does this really, really interest me? That the more curious or the more curiosity you can exercise as a daily or frequent practice, the more powerful it can be. So Yeah, I think let's just go back to the questioning part of things. So what do we mean by great questions? Do you want to explore
Yeah,
that?
what a great question. I mean, I think, obviously there are lots of different types of questions. You've just mentioned a couple of them, but I think particularly if you're early on in a discussion or a conversation, often starting with those open questions can just be great to really get more of an understanding of, actually what is happening, getting someone to open up and start sharing more detail can be really helpful. I think sometimes people are starting the conversations very early on with lots of closed questions, and they're not then really necessarily getting probably the answers and the level of detail that they potentially require that can actually make a big difference. I always love it as well. Like, sometimes when you're having a conversation, I think, often the first thing that's shared might not be the most important thing. Like, people will talk about something, and I think, following up and saying, okay, but why does that matter? Even like, just keep up, and why does that matter? And why does that matter? And then often, layering those questions around a similar point, like eventually you'll get to the real heart of what it is that matters. We do this a lot, don't we, as coaches? Like when people are, often, particularly at the beginning of working with a client, you'll get them to kind of download, just tell me what's going on right now, and then it's kind of, further questions to explore and probe further. So yeah, I think just starting with some of those open questions, it can just enable people to kind of share in their own words and feel listened to. Like you've said,
Yeah.
that's really, really important for buy-in, but really important for you to get that true understanding from that person as well.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, closed questions, there is a place for them, right? So
Yeah.
closed questions for, being something that has a yes or no answer. But open questions can be so powerful. So using ones like, words like what, how, who, when, back
Mhm.
to what you were saying about, tell me why that matters, that I think I first learned in change management around the five whys. Like, well,
Mm,
why? Well, why? Well, why?
yeah.
Well, why? And then I actually got taught in coaching was around the why can sometimes have a tone of judgment to it. So what you
Mm,
could do as well to build that relationship is to say, what's important to you about that? Tell me
yeah.
more. What else?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
else? What else
Yeah.
could we be forgetting? So there's so many different ways of asking
Yeah.
good open questions and to be
Yeah.
able to really, really show that interest and to also, I guess, manage the tone of it as well. So open questions are definitely a really good way to think about being more curious with others and
Mm,
to build those relationships because, and again, when it comes to influence and thinking about how to build those relationships, you've got the influence levers such as liking and reciprocity and unity. You want to make sure that you are starting off on the front foot with a good relationship. And so to do that, the curiosity is really, really
yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. And I think again, this is something that we do day to day, but I think when you're encouraging people to open up and share more detail, you start to see patterns in what they're sharing as well. Like, one word answers, short answers aren't going to give you that detail. But actually, when people feel that they've got the space and the time to just talk through their experience in their words, like you do start picking up on like, that's interesting. They've used that word three times, or that's really linked to that. It enables you to really start to get a sense of what is really going on right now and what is most important. And I think, for me, I've always got a pen in my hands. I love to take notes and I love to jot down, and it's like actually, sometimes picking up on some of that hidden messaging that's coming through as well. And like, sometimes when people are just kind of, almost brain dumping a little bit, that's where you get some of the real truths coming through. But I think just, you are yeah, encouraging kind of enough detail so that you can spot those patterns. I think that can make a big difference.
Yeah, and patterns are such a good point because, like you say, as coaches, this is what we're here to do. But in terms of with being curious in relationship with others in the organization, you will notice patterns about what's important to people. We've talked before about
Mm,
values. Like you will understand, and the more curious you
yeah.
are, you'll understand what's important to somebody and what their potential values are. So if someone who always likes honesty,
Yeah.
which is one of my top values, like somebody who makes sure that everybody's included,
Mm,
inclusivity. So many different types of values can come through, and that's where you can find that connection with somebody.
yeah.
So yeah, curiosity with others is definitely something. I'd love to go back to what we were saying about curiosity of self as well, like what
Mm,
that means.
yeah. Yeah. I think this is such an important part of it as well, isn't it? It's kind of, and particularly kind of in the work that we're doing, helping people to really understand themselves better, understand their own sort of decision making process better. I think, yeah, asking questions of ourselves like makes such a massive difference. So where do you want to start with this? Like what's the start point, do you think?
I mean, I will always say that everything starts with self because
Hmm.
we all have our own perceptions of things, our own experiences, our own lenses on the way we view things. So if you're thinking about how can I be, coming back to the traits about exceptional procurement leaders, how can I be more curious? It starts at home for me in terms of, well, how do I show up under pressure? How do I
Yeah.
show up when I'm thriving? What is it about me that people say I do really well? What do I find really easy? What comes naturally to
Mm,
me? So again, you could link this to so many aspects of what we do in terms of high performing leaders when it comes to strengths and values, etc. But you've got to be able to sit in the discomfort sometimes of that
mm,
self-reflection that we talk about to go, oh, why do I get so bothered by this
yeah.
particular scenario? What
Yeah.
is it that really, really triggers me? What is
Mm,
it that actually makes me go, right, I'm ready to go? I'm motivated, whatever it is you're thinking about, it's got to start with self because I will die on this hill that the more you understand yourself, your own reactions, your own
yeah.
responses, the more you can understand others.
Yeah, yeah. And to add to that, I would say as well, so, we're often supporting similar people at maybe slightly different stages in their career. So typically, people when I first start working with them, they are considering some kind of move or some kind of big career decision. Um, and often, they're starting to think about the future, but we always go back first. We always reflect to get that kind of understanding of like actually, who am I, my values, my strengths, what's most important, highs, lows, etc. Because that then helps the decision making for going forwards. But the point I was just going to make was like, this is not just fluffy coaching talk. Like, I know sometimes people kind of hear us talking about reflection and some
Not
people
all
think
coaching
this,
fluff.
some
No.
people think this stuff is like airy fairy. It's not. Like, when you think about your hireability, like, most of our audience, not all of our audience, but most of the people tuning in, they're at leadership level or they're looking to step into procurement leadership level roles. And when businesses are hiring at that level internally and externally, they are looking for a really high degree of self-awareness. They're looking for people that are really clear on who they are and what they want next, what their direction of travel is. They're looking for that kind of like reassurance that this person sat in front of us, like they understand the decisions they're making and they're making them for the right reasons for them. Like that's going to lead to much more successful decision making. And so, businesses, when they're hiring at leadership level, like they are trying to understand,
Mm.
like, how well do you know yourself? How well do you understand your strengths, but also your areas for development as well. And so this isn't just about self-reflect. This is about like it is focusing on yourself to elevate your performance, isn't it? That's essentially, it's elevating your performance, your delivery, and the perception of how you're seen by others in the marketplace, whether that's colleagues internally or external people. And it's always a really attractive quality in someone if they're really showing that they understand themselves and they know where they're going and they kind of know how they need to get there as well. That's a really, it's a really desirable quality when you're hiring a leader.
And I think as well, there is about the hiring, and there's also about the projects where you put people when they're in a crisis, when the business is in crisis or there's a problem to solve. Like
Mm,
having this sense of curiosity, self-awareness, which I know we've covered already, but around the how do they best deal with problem solving? How
yeah,
do they lead through a crisis? Because that's
yeah,
what organizations are looking for, is to be able to put people in that are calm in a crisis. And
totally.
the reason why I bring that up, it's not just around the self-awareness piece, but that curiosity to go, well, how am I in a crisis?
Yeah.
How can I be better? Because that's where that choosing a response instead of a knee-jerk reaction to things, like recognizing what triggers you, like what does trigger me? When do I have a good day? What is it that sets it
Mm,
off? That is where it all starts for me. I
yeah,
think, and like
yeah.
you say, good old coaching fluff, because we love to talk about the fluffy people stuff. But it is all of this stuff is grounded in research, it's grounded in science, it's grounded in
Yeah.
neuroplasticity, in the research around that, about how you can train your mind to do things differently. And that's what neuroplasticity is all about. So it's like that the all of these stats that we share, or these concepts and coaching
Mm,
tools, do come from very well established fields of theory and research.
mm,
So it's definitely, like, curiosity is definitely something that can be worked on.
yeah.
Some of us will have greater access to it than others naturally because of our personality types, but
Mm,
it is there and accessible for everybody. It takes that intentional practice and exploration.
yeah. And I think, as procurement leaders, like sometimes I think a few points here actually. I know many people like feel the pressure of feeling wanting to feel like they're the kind of expert in the room, but the reality is, as a procurement leader, you're often leading like, project teams where you don't already have that expertise. Like the people out in the business are the experts in that area. And so in order for you to work out enough of what you need to know, it comes from that curiosity. And I think that's where that kind of, that learning and that upskilling comes from. But I think, those that are really curious and really understand the types of questions that can help them to get to the heart of, what's going on, those are the people that are typically trusted to be parachuted into areas that they've not operated in before, because they're fine with it, because actually it's not about knowing that part of the business, but it's about using questions and curiosity in order to demonstrate your credibility, even if you don't have that technical knowledge in that particular area as well. So I just think, this, yeah, I think a lot of confidence and reassurance will be gained from the business through your choice of questions, actually. And again, like, so many people put themselves under this pressure of like, I have to have all the answers. I need the best answers. I need the best solutions. But actually, do you know what? The people that are delivering the best solutions and the most innovative solutions, they're typically asking the best questions up front.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
is what enables them to deliver the better results and the better solutions, because they really understand what is it they're solving. I know we've spoken about this before, but the level of noise in procurement for procurement leaders, it's like there's so much noise coming your way, like from the business. Particularly, I see it, when people step into new roles, and I've seen it very, very recently. It's like initially they're trying to win over the hearts and minds of the stakeholders, and no one's sharing stuff, and then all of a sudden everything comes their way at once. And some of it is just noise and some of it is really important stuff. And you need to be able to go deeper than that surface level kind of, request, if you like, or conversation, to then be able to prioritize and really understand, like, actually, where's my time and effort going to have the biggest impact in the business? What's going to help us to move forward most successfully?
Yeah, 100%. I think, the higher you go up the ladder, you're not expected to be a full-on technical expert in each and every area that you might be responsible for leading. It is around the understanding the needs of the people you're leading, the needs of the people that you're collaborating with. And
Yeah.
that's where, like say, becoming a problem solver, understanding what matters most to the people that are in that room, curiosity is absolutely at the heart and the root of that. And that's the uplift, that's the elevation that we're helping leaders to do, right? Because we're not here to tell you how to know your procurement role better. We're here to help you to sell the story, to tell your story, to be able to influence without authority, but also ethically, and to be able to make sure that you are standing firm in what your abilities are and your capabilities are, because you're already capable. You're at a level already where you're already capable. It's how we can then take it to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. So would you kind of have any like tips for anyone, would you say, for someone listening to this today, that is wanting to perhaps kind of elevate their questions, their questioning, their curiosity? What could someone do as an action? What could they take away from today, do you think?
I think, with anything, start small, start with one intentional open question you can use to build your curiosity as a
Yeah.
muscle. Like I see curiosity as a muscle. So just choose one question that is an open one that starts with what, where, when,
Yeah.
how, or even a tell me more. Tell me more about this.
Mm,
And have that question written on a post-it when you go into your next meeting, and make sure you ask it of somebody in that meeting. Start
mm,
really small and just challenge yourself with every call that you have, one question, and just see what extra information you have garnered from being able to do that.
yeah, great.
What would you give?
I think maybe I do love an audit, self-assessment. So
Mhm.
maybe even just, I think you could look at the different types of people that you're interacting with, include yourself, right? So I think it's like, think about your own curiosity for yourself and your understanding of yourself, but then maybe it's you thinking about, your boss, your peers, your stakeholders, your team members, even your suppliers as well. Asking better questions with your suppliers is going to improve that relationship. So maybe it is some kind of like, why don't you just have a look at picking one of those groups of people, and it's like, actually, where do I see the biggest opportunity is for kind of increasing my level of curiosity. For some people listening, it will be with themselves, but others it might be, do you know what, actually, let's like you say, let's try one thing, but with stakeholders, and do that first. So I think it's like, I think you could, yeah, just maybe do like a bit of a self-assessment, rate yourself. How would you rate your current level of curiosity out of 10 in those different areas with yourself, your boss, your peers, leaders, exec, whoever, team members, and then use that data to decide where you start.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Such great tips. Just to pick up on something that you said around opportunities, like curiosity opens huge doors to other opportunities as well. I don't know if we covered that, but such great points to offer there. Right, that was another top trait of exceptional procurement leaders. Thank you, Donna. And thanks for joining us, everybody. We are so passionate about bringing our coaching insights to helping procurement leaders to feel happier in their careers, more fulfilled, and to influence in and do it confidently. So we
Yeah.
have plenty more to share that is coming up soon.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye.
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 Thank you for tuning in to Procurement Pivots. We hope today's episode gave you actionable tips to help you to continue to move forward in your procurement career.
If you enjoyed the conversation, follow our episodes, share them with others, and please support us on our social media channels for others that might be interested to tune in.